Hi everybody, I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie,
Hello.
and together we are ThinkerThemer, and today we are reviewing for you Books of Time, the new title by Board and Dice and designer Philip Glowack.
In Books of Time, we are going to be compiling the history of human civilization by collating all of the great accomplishments that we've done in terms of trade, industry, and science. And we'll do that by creating 3 distinctive books before the time runs out in the chronicle book.
Now, each player is going to have one of these 3 individual books that represent trade, what's the other one?
Industry,
and
science.
And science thematically, or green, yellow, and red if you're a thinker.
A lot easier.
And these pages that go into the books are really amazing because they are a pile of essentially large cards that have binder punch holes in them, and these pages are going to go into each of these books using the ring binder system throughout the course of the game. And why are you trying to put pages in books? Well, these form a tableau of actions that you're able to take. And what kind of actions are you trying to take in this game? Well, you're really trying to collect different resources. The main 2 resources being these ink pens and this paper, which you're going to exchange for more books, and they're going to help you move up these 3 tracks that are going to help you score victory points at the end of the game, as well as some bonuses along the way. Another reason why you really need to worry about what pages am I putting in each of these books, and sometimes even in which order I put them into the books, is because in this game you are very focused on the 3 categories that relate to each of the books of objectives. And these objectives take the form of 3 different stacks. If I don't remove any of these tiles from each of the stacks, then it's going to be the top level objective that will score for me at the end of the game if I've met the conditions in those books. And the objectives always relate to the symbols that are found in the corner of each of these pages. However, along the way, you'll be given the opportunity to remove the top tile and to reveal an even harder objective that you can set your sights on in order to get more victory points at the end of the game. So a turn in this game is quite simple. All you're doing is, firstly, you get the opportunity to activate the special bonus for that round that's shown on the chronicle book. So in each round of the game, we're going to be turning a page in that book, which reveals 2 different options for bonus actions that you'll be able to do on your turn, either before your main action or after your main action. And in terms of your main actions, the things that you're really focused on are activating one of your books. So both of the actions that are shown on your books, you can turn the page of your books, which not only gives you then access to new tableau actions, it also can give you bonuses along the way. You can draft new pages to go into this holding area, or you can take them from your holding area and put them into your books if you pay the appropriate costs. You can even completely close a book, and when you do that, you get to flip all the way back to the front, but along the way, any page that has a bonus on it, you'll be able to accumulate those bonuses, and that's a quick way to get more resources into your bank. The final thing I'll talk about are these 3 different tracks that you can work your way up. They do give you points along the way, but most importantly, if you get to the top of them, then you'll get 2 victory points for every page in that associated book at the end of the game. And that can be worth a lot of victory points in and of itself.
I painfully learned after Amy optimized that far too well.
But with that out of the way, let's get talking about what we thought about this game. And the first thing to talk about is clearly the reason why most of you are probably watching this video. The reason why when we heard about this title, we wanted to cover it.
Yeah.
The binders.
The binders.
The binders.
You're making an actual physical book. How cool is that?
And they're really cute. And they immediately catch your eye when you see it on the table. So it is this like 90s form, functional.
It definitely reminds me of, what would they call? Is it like the something Frank? Those big binders that had like fluoro colors and things like that. It was pretty cool.
But they do have this really cool hard cardboard exterior that goes onto each of the books. So at the start of the game, every player is given one of these outside, as well as some starting pages in your book. And then the first thing when I saw this, when I was, evaluating whether we were going to cover this game, I was thinking I had these horrible memories of the ring binder.
Oh, yeah.
Like, is it going to catch on my hand?
That whole, like, it getting caught there or getting caught, like, as you're kind of closing it and then grabbing your...
You use your palm and it catches on your palm. I was really worried about that. I was really worried about those hazards. I was also concerned that I don't really like fiddly elements in a game.
Yeah.
And so I was worried about, if you're constantly opening and closing this book, does it get annoying?
Yeah.
But I actually found that, and I don't know if it's because my expectations were so much lower because I was worried about it being fiddly, but really, in this game, you never remove pages from your book.
Yeah.
You're only adding them, and you're not adding them every turn.
No.
So it doesn't really feel like you're opening and closing them that often, and I felt as though I could do that quite safely, noting that I have, we've got smaller hands, and if you had bigger hands, it could be a little more fiddly and difficult.
I will note, I did catch my finger once, and it was quite painful in the pad of the finger.
And that was while she was trying to clear them out because we were packing up the game.
Yes.
And then she was talking to me and distracted and just caught her hand. The other thing to note is it is a little, this is so weird, but it's a little loud, like the clicking.
It penetrates through rooms. So it's it doesn't matter where you are physically. It's going to be one of those things that if you're playing it in a public space, you're going to hear it if it's
clicking.
being played at the other end of the building. It's just constant click, click, click. Because even if you yourself are not always doing it, someone around the table usually will be.
And
so
I
that's
also say
loud sometimes.
The
but not an
quality
issue. I'm going to say
the quality of the card is pretty good. I know that some people are going to be concerned that they won't be able to sleeve them because of the holes. I'm sure there'll be some creative workarounds, but it is something to note that yes, that is a challenge with this game. But as long as people are careful and you're aligning the holes, hopefully they won't get too damaged. And I found it perfectly functional.
I agree. And I actually, does it add to the game? Yes, I feel like it's
100%.
So I wouldn't remove that from the game.
Now, this is one of those games where the best way to talk about what we think about it is to talk to you about our journey into the game and how that evolved over time. And I want to be completely transparent that after the first play of this game, it really didn't work for me. I didn't enjoy my first play of the game, and I think that's because, ironically, wait for it, nothing was binding it together. It didn't.
Good one.
Yeah. That's what your first book pun for this video.
There you go. One of many, potentially.
But it actually just felt as though there was nothing that was quickly bringing it together for it to make sense what I was trying to do. It felt a little bit samey because it feels like there's a lot of different things you're doing, but they all relate to pens and paper and the exchange of pens and paper.
I'm going to talk about it also from did it feel thematic? And it's as I was going through the rule book, it's you have this incredible section at the back where you have every single one of the cards, all the characters in the cards, all the key moments in civilization, and a bit of a description of those. And I'm like, this is going to be wonderful. And then when I was actually playing, none of that really came across. No. Yes, you have the images, but even trying to make the connection with the item that you get, you're really having to, do a bit of a stretch. And really, as you're playing it, it more just feels like you're matching symbols, you're aiming for combinations of symbols or sequences of symbols, even as you're going up the tracks. It doesn't, at no point did I connect that to of course I'd be doing this because of X, Y, and Z. Because of that, I feel like, same to you, my first play of this felt really clunky because I couldn't find any thematic logic to bring it all together.
Find the meaning
behind it. The only thing that made perfect thematic sense is you write a page and you add it to the book. That's it. That's where the theme kind of...
The theme is hinging on
this is what,
the book physicality. Because
number 2.
Without the book physicality, there would be no theme here, honestly.
Yeah.
It's just images and images that don't necessarily relate back to the actions that you can take with that sheet. So for me as well, I just did not at all feel like a writer making a chronicle of the things, the great things that had happened in history. Likewise, the difference between the 3 books, I couldn't tell you thematically.
Well, yeah, aside from just what image is
aside from
on
the image.
Them. Yeah, the symbols and the things that you're that are interacting are pretty much the same.
Very abstract.
Yeah.
First experience aside, we pushed through that, as we always do, to continue playing these games. And as we started to play it more and more, what happened was we just got better and better at optimizing, and in particular, cracking that tableau building aspect, understanding when to turn a page, when to flip back a page, making more sense of the iconography and how all of the different parts fit together.
I feel like for me, the clunkiness that I experienced the first time around, because I couldn't really find a thematic thread to make sense of things, because I then kind of learned what the icons are and the flow of that, then I was able to just sort of dive into, okay, this is going to be more of an abstract experience, and then dive into the actual puzzle of going, right, so where am I going to get the points in here? And immediately, and I feel like even after we finished the second game, it was like, that felt better. Like that, I'm starting to enjoy it, which is a really interesting thing to experience when you have a bit of a, then you're like, this is one of those games. Don't judge a Book of Times game by its first play cover.
Almost. But I think the real turning point for this game and our experience of it was when we both realized the importance of these objectives.
Yeah.
I mean, when you first start playing, you're like, oh, maybe I'll remove one of these and get the second one, and that would be really great. But then you realize, and especially through, which we'll come back to, the solo experience and understanding the scale of points that you can achieve, similar to something like Tapestry.
Yes.
When you set your eyes on that prize of a high score and you're like, I got nowhere near that.
Yeah.
What am I doing wrong?
I must be missing something.
Something. And then slowly you realize that actually you need to remove as many of these objective tiles as possible and really work towards the ones at the bottom which give you the most points.
Yeah.
Then you realize that in order to get there and do all of that, it's such a tight game to race against the clock, which is the pages in the chronicle and the number of rounds that are available to you, to build your pages, to leverage the tableau, to remove all of those, to move up the track. That's a lot to get done by the time the end game comes around.
Yeah, I also really, really enjoyed this concept of removing those tiles, because you're guessing, or you're hoping, or almost betting on the fact that you will be able to meet those conditions. So, and they're always kind of consistent in the sense that the greens are always going to be about different types of symbols. The yellow's always a sequence, which I think to me was the most interesting of all of them, and the most difficult, because it's like you have to have that exact sequence with no other symbols in between. So you have to be very clever about at what point do you write those pages into the book.
And as you move through that set of objectives, the order is different.
Yes.
So it's not like you're just adding one symbol to the sequence. If you decide that you're going to go for the last tile, then you need to start building that sequence immediately. So you're almost, there's an element of push your luck with these objectives, where you are banking on finding the right pages in the deck and then adding them to your books. And that is both an interesting mechanic, certainly the thing that pushed us the most strategically, but then because of that push your luck element, you are at the mercy of the deck. Yeah. And that sometimes, and especially towards the end game, where you're like, oh, I just need to get this last symbol to get these 22 victory points, and the card is not coming up.
Yeah.
The page is not coming up. That can be...
And it's a big deck. Sometimes you might have a bad run of, a color doesn't show up for a fair bit, and then you're like, oh no.
And I should say that there is a way to mitigate against this. You can spend 2 victory points to clear the market and bring out new pages to choose from. But I did find myself in a situation where I was doing that several times in a row, losing 6 victory points and still not getting the page that I needed. And at that point, when we're such close competitors, that is really frustrating from a luck perspective.
Yes.
And I know that is something in games that some people really dislike. You could certainly house rule it in some way, but that's just an element to be aware of. So as we got better and better with this game, the race got tighter and tighter.
Yes.
Maggie and I were very intensely competitive with each other and with our friends around the table. But I will say that one thing about the experience never changed for me. It was true of game 1, and it was true of game 5, and it will be true of every other game that we play of this. And that is the lack of player interaction. So This game is very much multiplayer solitaire.
Which I don't mind. I actually quite enjoy and find very pleasant a multiplayer solitaire experience.
If you watch the channel, this is a big tick for Maggie. Doesn't have to worry about anything that anybody else is doing.
Just focus on it's me versus the core puzzle in front of me.
But for me, it is a negative because I like to be engaged with other players' turns. And when there's low levels of interaction, I feel as though other players' turns create downtime in my mind because I have no reason to engage with what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that could have been changed a little bit. For example, at the top of this track, if you get to the top, you get 2 points per page in your book. It doesn't matter in what order people reach the top of that track. So unlike other games where the first player might get more victory points, the second player might get slightly less.
Or you might get locked out of something.
Or you get locked out of the bonus. That's not the case here. So even when I was looking at where other people were on that track, I never felt like, oh, now I need to get up that track. There was no pressure there. And so the only interactive element is people taking pages from the market that you wanted, but that market changes so regularly that you're really not evaluating it until it gets around to your turn.
And it's not like you could even hate draft if you wanted to, because it's actually very tricky to keep an eye on, how close are they to meeting their objective.
Or even knowing what they're going for.
Yeah, because you can only ever see whatever page they have displayed at any one time. So I have no idea if Amy's halfway through getting this objective or not. It's like, there's just, So there's no reason to ever look over at
So all you really hear is the murmurings of other people going, okay, now I'm going to change a pen for 2 paper and then spend 2 paper to build this and blah, 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 blah. So there's lots of busy work. Another element that adds to, I suppose, not downtime, but definitely that idea of a person spending quite a bit of cognitive effort on their turn is the chronicle itself.
Yes.
Because of the choice that it gives you of one additional bonus action, but you get the choice between 2. And also whether you do that before your main action or after, that's an additional cognitive load.
Yes.
It
adds to it. I always find that whenever there's that kind of 1-2 type action in a turn, it can bring things to a bit of a screeching halt, because then all of a sudden, when something that could have been giving me a little bit of analysis paralysis, just picking one of my 6 main actions, now means that then, I also have to consider what's on the chronicle now, and obviously that changes every round, and then going, and out of which of those ones, which am I going to do, and then am I going to do it before or after, or have I done it? I think I did it. Like, that happens all the time, and then that kind of adds to the wait time in between turns.
And the reason why this level of interaction is so important is because now we're going to talk about our preferred play account. And actually, this game to me was perfect when Maggie and I were just playing.
It's very pleasant at a 2-player account.
Yeah, really good at a 2-player account. And because you don't have that buy-in, and because there's no race objectives, I found that at a 3- and 4-player account game, it just, for me, lengthened the game, and it didn't add anything to the experience aside from your friends really enjoying the book elements, and our friends did. I enjoyed seeing it through their eyes, but in terms of when I would get this off the shelf, this is like a showdown between Maggie and I.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where it got really interesting for, I think, at least for me, was this whole the more we kept playing it, the more the better we got at it. The more it was just like a battle of wits and even though I have no idea how well Amy's doing throughout the game, by the end of it you're really invested, and that's it's a really good feeling.
But it also means that if you're playing with inexperienced players and you're an experienced player, you're almost certainly going to beat them at this game.
So don't be that person that's like, let me teach you a game, and then you destroy them and then make them hate the game forever. So there is going to be a distinctive advantage if you have figured out the areas to explore.
Like Tapestry, like Woodcraft, any game where you're trying to crack that combo puzzle.
Yeah. I'll quickly talk about the solo gaming experience. I actually really enjoyed this solo because it's a very straightforward solo implementation. That's probably one of my favorite ways. It is a bit of a beat your own score, but also they've introduced these challenges essentially. So you decide a level of difficulty, and based on that level of difficulty, it's going to determine how much time or how many pages are in the chronicle, meaning how much time you'll have to kind of get through it. There's usually going to be a score that you're going to try and reach, but then you're also going to be committing to 3 possible objectives that are a combination of, well, I need to make sure that, for example, I reach the top of this track, or have 4 pages in each one of the books by the end of the game. So you have, depending on the difficulty, it's how many objectives you need to hit. There's quite a lot of objectives, so it gives you a lot of options to like replay the game, and like now you're trying to do this different challenge. I actually really enjoy that, because aside from that, all you're really doing in terms of, I think it's Scribbles, the automa that you're playing against, all that's really doing is, as you're changing the page of the chronicle, it tells you which of the pages of the market to get rid of. So sometimes it might be 1, sometimes it might be 1, sometimes it might be 2, sometimes it might be completely refreshed. So it's a very, very easy, doesn't distract me from what I'm doing. Oh, I dropped my rule book. And yeah, and I actually really enjoyed my way through it, to the point where like I would finish playing it, I'm like, oh, okay, how long is it going to take me to do another one? Probably I can do it. I can fit another one in. And so even though it's not a thematic experience, I actually really enjoyed that core puzzle.
The solo implementation.
Yeah. Didn't make me better. It often, sometimes like this sort of solos make me a better player. And then when I go back and play with Amy, I'm like, yes, I haven't yet.
I did enjoy listening to Maggie playing solo, because all you can hear is the click, click,
yeah,
click,
just the
click
constant
of the folders. And that's how I knew she was playing this game again.
Yeah.
I just want to add 2 little points of feedback about this game. One thing that I found quite challenging in the first game was that the iconography, there's not much of it, and so it should be quite straightforward. But on the player board, where you place the pages that you're going to put into your books, they use the gain icon rather than the spend icon with the X through it, which is confusing, because that's what you need to spend in order to get that page into your book. So that was weird to me. And the second little thing is that one of our ring binders is misaligned. I'm sure that's just a component check thing, but do check your copy. I know Board and Dice do have a way of replacing those parts, but that was something else that was a bit frustrating when I was trying not to damage my pages and trying to make sure I didn't clip the page by accident with that misalignment.
And again, that would be just a matter of like them if that happens to one of your copy, requesting that piece.
These things happen.
But
now let's lead into our scores. And this is a really interesting one for me. If you're skipping straight to this timestamp, please go and listen to everything we've said, because there are a lot of elements of this game that for me personally, some work and some don't work so much for me. A lot of this game comes down to, and any game comes down to, personal preference with our ratings, of course. For me, this game is not interactive enough in terms of my personal gaming preferences. I like those race elements. I like going head to head. And in this, I just didn't feel engaged with other people's turns. However, I really enjoyed the optimization puzzle, and I really enjoyed kind of getting my head around this layered objectives and how they related to the books, and beating that ticking time bomb that is the chronicle. I really enjoyed the pressure that placed on me in terms of a puzzle. But for me, I'm not sure about the replayability. It's one of those games where I feel like maybe I've cracked the puzzle and maybe there won't be too much more to it from here, but it is a solid and interesting design and a really nice spin on tableau building and the way that you can activate the actions that are available to you. And so for me, it is a 7.
Okay, so for me, I think it's interesting because I have the multiplayer solitaire thing is actually a plus. I really enjoy that. I don't want to have that much more interactivity or interaction with other people. For me, I think that kind of brought it down a little bit. Is I was hoping for this to be a really thematic experience, because it's almost like the start of the flavor text that's setting it up. It's like, ooh, it's all about the rich history of humanity and all. And it's like, but then when you're actually playing it, it is a fairly abstract symbols collection type game. I didn't actually, because then once I was over that, I didn't mind the puzzle. Actually, the more I played it in particular, the more I kind of got into it. And I feel like I'm not really done with it. Like I'm still continuing to enjoy it. I also like all the colors, and I do like the illustrations and the fact that there's, a little bit more information about them in the rule book. So for all of those reasons, and even I actually really like the whole pushing my luck of, am I going to go for gold and push all the way back down and aim for like my 24-point objective perspective for that one. I really enjoyed that. So for that, I'm going to give it a 7.2. That's my score.
It's not so surprising to me that it's a little bit higher than mine. Maggie was playing this solo quite a bit and did enjoy the solo implementation.
You clearly won't be able to do this like quietly, like kind of go, they won't know that I'm playing again. You'll be hearing that the whole
working.
time. Click, click. It's like, I'm just arranging my office papers.
And just to finish up this video, in case you did not know or you're new to this channel, all of the work that we do, both reviews, previews, everything on the channel is unpaid by publishers. We rely on the support of our community. So thank you so much to the Joey fam or our YouTube membership, because you really do support everything that we do here on ThinkerThemer. If you enjoyed this video, please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game content soon. But otherwise, bye for now.
Bye.